There was a night and day difference between Justin Fields in week one and Justin Fields in week two. After week one, it felt like the Jets had their guy, and it felt like the change of scenery was going to do wonders for Justin Fields. There was optimism on both sides, and things were looking on the up. But after week two, we have a lot more questions. Now, part of this, of course, Fields went down in concussion protocol. He did not finish the game. But when he was out there, 3 completions on 11 attempts, it wasn't pretty, it wasn't efficient, and it was a far cry from what he did in week one. And when I saw that contrast, it made me think for a second, why is this the case? Why did Justin Fields go from looking so great to start off the year to struggling to complete a pass? And it reminded me of a couple of seasons ago. There were two situations this happened, both of them with Cam Newton. First off, when Cam Newton joined the Patriots, there was optimism after those first couple games. He was looking good. But then as the season went on, his play slowly declined. And then when Cam Newton reunited with the Carolina Panthers, you of course have the famous "I'm back." He was coming in, he was scoring touchdowns. But then once again, after a couple games, things went sour. And that iconic "I'm back" became more infamous than it did famous. Because he might have been back, but in "I Love Cam Newton," he was not back for long. As sad as that is to say. And there's one similarity, of course, between Fields and Cam Newton, and that is that they are both rushing quarterbacks. And these two guys make their living not off of their arm talent, and believe me, they've got arm talent. They're a quarterback in the NFL. But their run butter is with what they can do when a play breaks down, when they are able to get out of the pocket and scramble and make a play. And I think that archetype can lead to some inconsistency at times. And you're really seeing that with Justin Fields. Let's break it down. So, first of all, let's consider what a quarterback is. A quarterback is the offensive hub of a modern day football team. This is a guy that your entire offense runs through. That pass game makes defenses respect the run game. And more often, that pass is the focal point of the offense. And with that, what you can do with your arm is integral to your success. Let's consider the consensus top four quarterbacks in the league. Once you get to five and onward, it's a little bit murkier. But those top four are pretty set in stone. You have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. Patrick Mahomes, one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. He has immaculate arm strength. He can make a throw from any angle. The arm talent is undeniable, one of the best we've ever seen. Josh Allen, it's a pretty similar story. If there's anyone in the league with a stronger arm than Mahomes, it's got to be Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, he's a little bit of an anomaly. We will get to him later. But as the years have gone on, he has become a better and better passer. Last year was very, very efficient. He was amazing last year at passing the ball. And then Joe Burrow, it's a similar story. When you talk about a modern day field journal, a modern day Drew Brees, someone who's going to complete their passes at a high rate and have immaculate passing numbers through the air every single year, Joe Burrow is that guy. For the top four quarterbacks in the league, the arm talent is undeniable. And the key to it is it's pretty consistent for all of them. On any given day, I feel like I could trust any of those guys, but then you get to somebody like Justin Fields, and I don't necessarily know. Like what we saw in week two, I don't know that I can trust him on any given football game. There's going to be moments where he looks great, but then there's going to be times where it all comes crashing down. And why is that? And I think that's because relative to, those top four quarterbacks, his arm talent is of course not necessarily there to that level, and his game is more so predicated upon his scrambling ability. And I think that can create some inconsistency. Because when you have that undeniable arm talent that your whole game is based around, given that you're the quarterback and you're going to be asked to throw the ball, that is the most firm foundation that you can have. But when instead your foundation as a quarterback is based upon your running ability, you can be effective. You can be explosive at times, but there's also going to be moments where you're going to be inconsistent, where you're not hitting all your passes, and that can really affect your play. It can affect your mojo, affect your rhythm, and harm your team if you're not hitting and connecting on those passes. And because that's not your foundation, that's not what you're doing most as the central offensive hub at that quarterback spot, even though that is arguably your biggest responsibility. Historically, that has always been your biggest responsibility. You're going to be more inconsistent. And I think that's what we're seeing with Justin Fields. Because his game is especially based upon his ability to run, that is undoubtedly Justin Fields' bread and butter. When you have him as your full-time quarterback, when you have him week in, week out, there's going to be games where he's not able to execute in the passing game the same way a Joe Burrow would. But he's still going to have to be able to throw because he's your quarterback. And so in turn, he's not always going to be super consistent. And I think that's just something we have to see with these scrambling quarterbacks. And there are exceptions. Of course, I'm going to talk about Lamar in a second. But there's Justin Fields, who we saw that sharp contrast from week 1 to week 2. Or somebody like Jalen Hurts. And I am a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I love Jalen Hurts, but he frustrates me sometimes with his passing. Because there will be times where he looks really sharp, but then there will be games where he's not making quick decisions, where he's holding on the ball too long because Jalen Hurts is very much a scrambler. Look at somebody like Daniel Jones. He's not somebody I would consider a field general, although shout out to him, he's doing real good over in Indiana right now. Indiana Jones is cooking right now. However, for the most part of his career, Daniel Jones has also been pretty inconsistent. And this is somebody who I think running is a sneaky good part of his game, but the passing hasn't always been there. And at that quarterback spot, in which you were asked to be a passer a lot of the time, when that's not the firm foundation of your offense, that can make you inconsistent. If you focus on the run game too much, that can make you inconsistent. You might not be the best passer, but that's okay because you're athletic. You can make a good run. But when you're asked to pass, you may not always execute. And that's what happens with somebody like Justin Fields. I almost said Baker Mayfield. He's the exact opposite of that. And this is not to say that you cannot build around a scrambling quarterback. I don't believe that one bit. I think you absolutely can. Look at your most recent Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts is the definition of a scrambling quarterback. His most recent game against the Chiefs, the passing numbers weren't great, but they found a way to win. And throughout these first 2 weeks, Philadelphia, they've not had a passing touchdown. But because of Hurts' rushing ability, especially in week 1, he still managed to find the end zone. And obviously, they are Super Bowl champions. You can win with a scrambling quarterback, but inconsistency, that's part of it. I remember Jalen Hurts, his first Super Bowl. He was amazing, incredible. But then you'll get a game like week 2, like we just had, in which he barely has 100 passing yards. And I just think there is a natural trend of inconsistency there. This is not to hate on scrambling quarterbacks at all. I love them. However, it does explain something like Justin Fields, in which, as a quarterback, it's your responsibility to pass. Absolutely. That is what you were asked to do first and foremost. So when you build your game around the run, there's going to be times where you're not going to execute that pass and you're going to look inconsistent. You're not going to know fully where you're going to get week in, week out. This is not to hate on him. This is just to point out an observation, point out some inconsistency, try to explain why Justin Fields looks so different week 1 to week 2. And of course, let's get to the exception here, the elephant in the room, Lamar Jackson. And number 8, I firmly believe, is the exception to this rule. Last year was, in my opinion, one of the best all-around versatile years I've ever seen from a quarterback. Through the air, 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. And then you combine the dual threat ability of Lamar as perhaps the best scrambling quarterback we've ever seen. It doesn't get much better than that. He was uber efficient in the passing game. He was scoring touchdowns, and then he was such a running threat as well. It opened up everything. Everything came so easy to him. Lamar was incredible last year. And so you see this inconsistency that I'm talking about, and you look at Lamar and you say, hey, why is that not the case with him? And I think Lamar is so elite. He has developed so well as a passer that has become so much less of an issue with him. He is incredible both through the air and on the ground, and so that opens up both ways of the game for him. His best of all time scrambling ability is able to make defenses really have to key in on him, on his scrambling ability. That opens up the pass game. And likewise, you have to respect his pass game. 41 touchdowns, 4 picks, you've got to watch out for that. So that also opens up his run game. He is so elite that he becomes an exception. And look at Cam Newton, the example I brought up earlier with him being inconsistent, that was later on in his career with his Patriots tenure, with his second tenure of Carolina. But back when he was an MVP, that was much less of a problem. Jalen Hurts, it's not always a thing with him either because he's so great at times. If you are elite, you can beat that. But if you're somebody like Justin Fields or Daniel Jones, in which you can look great for a game, but it's not always there, you're going to be dealing with some inconsistency because the running game is your foundation and passing is built upon that. And as a quarterback, you've got to be able to pass. So you're going to get some natural inconsistency there. And that is why we saw such a sharp contrast between Fields in week one and Fields in week two. Do I think he'll bounce back? Yes. I don't know that it can get much worse than he did in week two. And that's not a knock on him, right? I'm saying it's only up from there. I firmly believe that Fields at least has a place as a journeyman quarterback in this league. I think he has the talent to at least be that because 3 for 11, it's only going to get better from that. So Justin Fields, just with his style of play, I think it's naturally inconsistent, but that's okay because Justin Fields, when he's on, he has a solidified position in this league. He is so fun to watch. So he might have his flaws, but overall, Justin Fields, I do believe that he will bounce back from this poor week two showing. I'm hoping for a speedy recovery from concussion protocol. And while he might be inconsistent, Justin Fields has a spot in this league. He is he is a credible dual threat quarterback. And when he is on, that is a whole new spark to your offense. That's how they stay in this league, these dual threat quarterbacks. Because, if they're not elite passers, they might have that inconsistency. But when they are at their best, they bring life into your offense like no other. They are not complacent in the pocket. They can get a play moving when someone breaks down. So, especially with the way the game has evolved, there will always be a spot for them. And that is the state of the modern dual threat quarterback. Thank you.